Hi, it's Linda Kroll. Welcome to our Wednesday Wisdom Workshops. And my special guest today is Jill Reynolds, who has had a very interesting life and background, helps the world in many different ways. And we're going to be talking about self-leadership and being connected to self and how coming from yourself leads to hope, health, and healing. And Jill has a whole workshop coming up about that, a whole summit. So I want to introduce you, Jill. Glad you're here. And please tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Linda. It's a privilege to finally get to meet you. I've known you for a while on Facebook and now got to meet you in person. So a little bit about me. I started my own company, which is Braveheart Workshops, was founded in 2017. And when COVID hit, I felt God was directing me to be a podcast show host. So now I have the Connection Show and I also do Connection Circles. But my background has been outside sales for 39 years previous. And I got my certification in meeting and event planning. So that's kind of who I am as far as on the professional end. I'm married and I have 13 grandkids.
Wow.
So that's a little bit about who I am and what led me into Braveheart Workshops a little bit, and which leads me into kind of like the self thing is realizing that there are so many people hurting out there that needed to release burden so that they could get in touch with self. And so I reached out to a world-renowned drama therapist to ask if she would want to do retreats with me. And so thus began Braveheart Workshops, where we started having these events to help others release their burdens, to be self-free and find self.
So that's fabulous. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by, well, as an IFS therapist for over 35 years, I'm familiar with self and parts and releasing burdens. But for those of you who are listening, everybody has a burden of some kind. And when we don't acknowledge the pain or the fear or the sadness or the hurt or the anger, we exile those parts of ourselves and we go out in the world and we manage in different ways to show the world. And then when we can't manage anymore, we get extreme in some of our behaviors. But when you take the time to get to your highest self and have compassion for everything you've been through, then you can unburden the pain from the past. So Jill, tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, so probably the best way to say it is I've now been a Christian for 39 years. And I'm a recovered drug addict, alcoholic, recovered from codependency and recovered from eating disorders. And so probably the easiest way to say it is no matter how much therapy I had, no matter how much work, because it was work I did, I never felt joy in my life. I didn't feel connected to self. And I kept praying more. I kept going to more and more therapy sessions, Linda. And I just felt so much sadness inside me that was not. And so I for leadership for me was when I discovered internal family systems for the first time at Castlewood Treatment Center and started to slow it down. And instead of doing talk therapy, I would slow it down, close my eyes and go inside and ask a part if it would be willing to tell me more about itself. And so when the willingness was there and the part would come out and it might talk to me, it might be the part of not being wanted as a child, and it would talk to me. At the end of the session, I would ask it if it would have a willingness to go to the beach and relax for the first time. And it was the most amazing feeling that came over me, Linda, because it was like the part, and I love beaches and I love the sand. It's my little girl part that comes out. So when the part would feel connected and calm and it would go to the beach, for the first time I'd open my eyes after a session and I would be like, who is this? Like, I don't know who this person is. And it was like, I didn't even know I had an identity. And I think this really resonates too, Linda. I remember at one point being in a body image class, and I said to the therapist, I can't relate to all these young girls who have body image issues. And I said, I don't have a problem with body image. And the therapist looked at me, Linda, and said, Jill, it's because you don't even know you have a body.
Wow.
And I think that that's what connected me to self. It was like, I never even knew I was in a body, Linda. And it was so weird. It was like, so as I continued to give myself permission to have the confidence to talk to these parts that were very wounded. I had a lot of abuse in my life. And as the parts had space to be seen, I lined up, and this was well before social distancing. I lined up all of these beach chairs 12 feet apart on this gorgeous beach with sand pails and suntan lotion and beach towels. And so when I would be kind and close my eyes and talk to the unwanted part, or talk to the part that wasn't good enough, or the part that hated their body, at the end, I would say, you've been so kind to me by helping me. Would you now would like to relax? And I would give it permission, and it would say, look at me like, what do you mean you're going to let me relax? And I'd say, do you want to go play at the beach and just like hang out there? And if I need you again, I'll come back and I'll visit you, and you can come back and be with me. But I would give it permission. And as I started to do this, Linda, for the very first time, I'd have these, and I want to use the word moments because I think it's important for people to hear. I'd have these moments, and I'm getting it now, of goosebumps. And I'd be like, wow, like, am I really a person? Like, do I really exist?
Well, that's quite a story, and quite visual in terms of how to help your parts heal. So
Mhm.
you obviously had some very good IFS therapists, and Internal Family Systems was founded by Dick Schwartz, and they're at the selfleadership.org. And this IFS Institute has many wonderful therapists there. And what we do as therapists is to help people do exactly what Jill just said, which is to go inside and calm yourself enough to be aware of what your parts are feeling. And you can do that by taking a breath. Everybody take a breath. Ready? Take a breath and go inside and just close your eyes and scan your body from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, and just notice. And while you're doing that, notice where you're feeling any tension or tightness. Notice your thoughts. Notice your feelings. These are all parts. And those parts have different jobs. So I'm going to use the dolls that I used before to show you that we all have an inner child. And we exile our feelings sometimes by not wanting to be vulnerable, not dealing with the pain. And I've said before, this is my codependent doll. This is what she looked like when I bought her. She was exhausted. In fact, she used to say, I love you, but she doesn't even do that anymore. But this is how we manage. We take care of everybody else. And then when our needs don't get met, we sometimes get extreme. And the way we get extreme looks threatening to other people. Sometimes it's threatening to our own safety and self. But what Jill described was to getting to her quiet center, that higher consciousness, that self-leadership, that present moment awareness, with a breath, with help, with therapy, with compassion, with awareness. And as you know your parts, you thank them. Like Jill said, you thank them for how they've tried to set boundaries for you and how they've tried to protect you. You thank the parts that have managed so hard to take care of everybody else. And you invite them, like Jill did, to the beach, where they don't have to be annihilated, but they can actually go do something more fun, more relaxing, more helpful. And then you go back to that inner child inside of you, and you just shower her or him with love. We got guys here too. It's not gender based. We got guys. And sometimes guys try to look cool. So do girls. And then we get extreme. And that's how we do our relationships. So again, we thank our parts. Jill sends them to the beach. Sometimes I send them to a boardroom where they're in my board of directors meeting. So they're not losing their job. They're just whispering my ear when I need to rely on them instead of taking the lead. Because when they take the lead, I lose that access to myself. And that's what Jill was describing when she said she didn't even know she had a self. And I loved what you said about goosebumps because
Yeah, and I wanted to say, for me
yes,
personally, Linda, I've needed to have this gorgeous beach for all my parts so that I don't forget where they are because I'm 67 now and I don't want to lose them and like not remember if I left them in a boardroom if I need them. So I
yes,
keep them on the same beach so I can find them. But
that's
I wanted to say one thing that really helped me, and I think it'll help the audience to really understand parts, because when we hear the word parts, sometimes we get confused. So this one really helped me. Is I envision this little baby being formed in a mother's womb. And the second that baby is ready to get delivered, I envision the OBGYN reaching in to pull that baby out of the womb. And as the baby's coming out of the womb, the baby's like going, like, what in the world's happening? Someone like in this part comes in and maybe I'm scared that like I was in this placenta. And then the doctor brings the baby out and slaps it. And the part comes in and says, I'm angry. And then they cut the umbilical cord and says, I feel abandoned. And so I really love that vision because I look at that baby as precious, that inner child of all of a sudden it comes into the world immediately with these exiles that are like, I'm abandoned, I'm afraid, I'm angry. And then they go through life and start losing self. And so I look at that, and that really helps me to have self leadership, that I know, wow, this isn't like a bad thing that happened to me. This is like kind of almost like normalcy. Like we go through life, and if you're breathing and you're living, we have parts that come in. It's like you don't have to be raised in a dysfunctional, distressed, traumatized, sexually abused home to have parts, is what I'm trying to say. Everyone has parts.
absolutely. And the parts that we have, excuse me, the parts that we have inform who we are. So if we are trying to show who we're being to the world, uh, acknowledging our parts is very helpful because I've said that there are many ways to get to self. And one of them is to just take a breath, because when we're burdened, when our parts are active, we can feel that in our body. And sometimes just taking a belly breath, everybody do it now. Inhale to your belly, belly expands, release back to your spine. And doing a belly breath allows air to go all the way down instead of just into your chest, and expands that essence of who you are internally. And you mentioned the goose pimples and the divine. Um, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think when we're in self, we're connected to the divine within us. And it doesn't have to be religious, it doesn't have to be God, it can be nature, spiritual center, soul. But it's that quiet inner voice that helps us heal. And that's why I love what you're offering this week. And I wanted you to tell people about it. And also, if they're listening a replay on this and it's late to get the replay, you can tell us what to do about that. But all of that self energy, I'm sure, is what you're bringing and your guests are bringing to the Hope, Health, and Healing Summit that you're giving. So I want you to talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, I'll go even more into self-leadership.
Okay.
When I started Braveheart workshops in 2017, in the last one I did, which was July of 2019, I talked to Dr. Laura Wood, who was the person I was doing this with, and said, let's create a calendar for 2020. So when 2020 happened and we were ready to create it and COVID hit and we had to put everything on hold, I was like, okay, what do we do now? So God told me at that point to do a podcast show called The Connection Show, and start to talk to people about restore, renew, and reconnect in community. So I did that for 12 months faithfully in self, and really like started to see self in restoration, renewal, and reconnection. And then 2021 came, and I was like starting up my podcast show, Linda. And I thought that's what I was supposed to be. And God said to me, no, Jill, this year we need to talk about hope, health, and healing. And did it, I slowed it down and I said, well, tell me more, God. And he said, more people need to really come to grips with, we need hope in him, and whatever you want your spirituality, hope. And then we need health within our bodies. And again, I'm a Christian and self lives in me. So I needed health within so I could tap more into soul and spirit inside of me and keep my body to a place where it was healthy so I could connect self. And then I needed to look, God told me to look at healing in my life. And he said, heal the spirit, heal the mind, and heal the soul. So I just kept listening to this. And Linda, I can't even tell you how many goosebumps. I mean, literally at 3 a.m, God wakes me up at 3 a.m. to tell me something more about self. So that's how come I'm doing this. This is not my event.
I love it.
This
I
is
love what
not
you
my
said.
event. It really is not. And I have to keep saying that. I need to say it one more time. This is not my event. This is a God inspired, and you can talk about God in whatever way you want it, that he told me that the world needs hope, health, and healing now more than ever. And then he just directed these speakers to me. Some I've never met in my whole life, and he just brought them to me. And one girl said she was told by God to call me one day, and we talked for 3 hours. And she has a prophetic ministry out of Ohio, and God said, you're supposed to be on this platform and talk about your story. So, and Dr. Laura Wood, I called her, and she's world renowned. I mean, she gets on platforms all over the world, Linda. And I just called her and said, I think you're supposed to speak at my event. And she said, okay. And I said, what do you think maybe we could talk about? And she says, I think the world needs to know about embodiment and how when we keep these things stuck in our bodies, that we get sick and we have disease, and we need to talk about releasing those burdens in our bodies so that disease doesn't set in.
That's wonderful. And when you talk about, hearing from God, you're Christian, I'm Jewish, it doesn't matter what religion we are. I like to say that I'm trying to answer the call, what I'm being called to do. But for me, it's trying to figure out which is calling, my ego or my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And when my ego's calling, there's a lot of fear and roadblocks and stress. And when my soul is calling, it's just like you said, the doors open and one thing follows after another. But anyone that's listening to join the Compassionate Communication community at compassionatecommunication.group, because that's where Jill and I got together. That's where there's a lot of healers and teachers and leaders connecting so that we can share our collective energy and collaborate in ways that add more hope, health, and healing to the world. So a little plug for compassionate communication.group. Join us there. And now I want to turn it over to Jill so she can tell us a little bit about the workshop. And then if you have any questions, I know we're coming to you after the fact, but please post them under this video, and we will get back to you with any answers you'd like to any of your questions. So Jill, why don't you tell us a little bit about the workshop before we go?
And yeah, and I'd love to just do a tagline with what Linda said. And part of utilizing internal family systems program, they talk about the C's, and the C's are compassion, connection, calmness, curiosity, creativity. So Linda, I love the name of your group because it's got the compassion and the connection all part of that. So manifesting in your group. So the event is Friday, March the 12th. And we begin at 1 o'clock and end at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's only $28.99. And the beauty of this event is we will record the entire event. So even if you have to work or you could only come on for an hour or two, every person that registers after a few days later will get the fully recorded version of the event. Again, my website is braveheartworkshops.com. And I'm allowing registrations to continue until Thursday evening around 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And then I'll send you the Zoom link so that you can join us on Friday.
That sounds fabulous, Jill. I am so grateful that we got a chance to do this. We've been emailing back and forth for a very long time, and I've been aware of your work and all that you've been doing. So just being able to use this platform and share the wisdom that Jill is bringing to the world and she's channeling to the world. And I think that's who we are when we're in self. When we're in self, we are channels. We are channels of love and light. And I'll share just a funny story. I'm a mediator, and the only person that's ever mediated as my intern was my daughter. And she watched me do a mediation one time. And when I'm working, I'm very much in self. And when we were finished with the interview, she said to me afterwards, she said, "Why can't you be more like that all the time?"
Yeah, well, it's awfully hard to be in self all the time.
Exactly, especially
know?
when you're dealing with your children and parents and workplaces and partners and things like that. So
Well, and that's why, Linda, I said when I'm in self, I have those moments of joy that I never knew I could have. And I use the word moments because, Linda, I used to just beat myself up horrifically because my sister had the biggest spirit of joy. She was always happy. And she would say to me all the time, she's passed away this September of pancreatic cancer. And she would always say to me, "Oh, aren't you excited?" And I'd look at her really confused because I didn't know what excitement looked like. And I would be like, "Oh my gosh, am I even alive? I don't even know what excitement is." So that's why I really want to share. Like you said, it's so hard to be in self 24/7. It's really hard to be in self 24/7.
yes, it is. That's why we were talking about being in self. You can't be in self 24/7, but you have a self 24/7. And you can use that self energy, self compassion, self love to thank your parts for the jobs that they've learned how to do, acknowledge their intention to be helpful, invite them to go to the beach and relax where you can find them, where you can use the benefit of what they're trying to do to keep you healthy and safe and have boundaries, but they defer to your self-leadership. And Jill, I'm so happy you were here today to talk about self-leadership. I know there's going to be a lot in Summit coming up. I encourage people to join. I'll be there and watching and learning. And my special thanks to Dick Schwartz and everybody at the IFS Institute who has promulgated the ability to be in self, to share self, to learn about self, and to share with the world this calm, compassionate, connected, creative, curious, courageous, confident, grateful energy of self. So thank you, Jill, so much for being here. And tell them again one last time, braveheartworkshops.com.
Yep, with an S, and I'm going to bend down because you can't see it.
There we go. Thank you. braveheartworkshops.com. And I'd like them also to join us in the Compassionate Communication group or the Compassionate Communication community on Facebook. So we'll look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for checking this out, and our love to everybody. Bye for now.
Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jill. Bye.